Hey y'all, Tim here with D&D Guide Service. Thought I'd give y'all your Texas kayak fishing report since I'm super slow about doing that. And I'm actually going to change it up a little bit this week. I'm going to start off with Lake Livingston instead, and I'm going to do so for a reason. So as most of you might know, Lake Livingston area got hit pretty hard by a tornado last week. A few people were killed, a lot of people were injured, a lot of structures. Had a lot of damage on Alaska area in specific. Many of us fish up there. A lot of us know people from up there. I know people that fish up there. So I'm starting with this to ask y'all for help. Any help that y'all can contribute towards their relief would be phenomenal. Whether it's donating just clothes and household items that you no longer need to some causes trying to help them rebuild, or whether you want to just donate some cash or some funds over to a relief organization that's helping out there. Anything would be appreciated to try and help that community get back on their feet. I know with the virus mess going on right now, it's probably not the best time to have a tornado roll through. So hopefully we can help them out, make their days a little bit brighter, help their recovery move a little bit quicker, and help them get back to a normal life. So thank you for anything that y'all are able to do and contribute to them over there by Lake Livingston, okay? Let's start off with the fishing report. Lake Livingston. It's fishing good right now. The bass are fishing good in the creeks, obviously, and then out towards the mouth of the creeks, towards the main lake. Don't skip the docks either, especially during the day. Definitely work the docks, flip around the docks, and see what you can come up with. Crankbaits are working well. Spinnerbaits are working well. Chatterbaits are working well. And then jigs and your soft plastic worms are working well when you're flipping them into things, especially when the sun comes up during the day. If you're flipping in the creeks and those laydowns and stuff, the soft plastics are working really well for bass. Crappie are good up shallow. Minnows and jigs, just try your varying colors. I technically prefer black and chartreuse. That's one of my crappie jigs I pretty much use all the time. But mix it up on your jig colors and see what works on Livingston. The crappie are biting good shallow and up in the creeks right now. And then the white bass are good out towards the main lake. They've moved back out a little bit. Jigs, spoons, blade baits are working really well for white bass. Don't rule out the blade bait. It's a phenomenal bait for white bass. What do we got next? Lake Somerville. We actually got to fish there pretty recently. Lake Somerville's fishing pretty good right now. Water temperature's good. It was a tiny bit high. It's kind of come down a little bit. It's about normal right now. The bass are still pretty good on the shallow bite. Definitely a late spawn, post spawn bite. They've pretty much transitioned into that post spawn feeding frenzy. Crankbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits have all been working really well, especially early. Top waters have been working well early as well. And then your soft plastics, your worms and your lizards have been working well around shallow structure. Definitely just keep working the shallow structure on Somerville right now, and you'll come across the bass right now. So the crappie are also good on Somerville. They are actually out a little bit deeper. I would fish in the 8 to 20 foot range. Start a little more shallow in the 8 to 10 foot range with your minnows and your jigs, and if you're not getting bit, move it out a little bit to your 15 foot range, and then if that doesn't work, move it out to the 20 foot range. But they're out a little bit deeper than the other lakes right now. And then the white bass and the hybrids are back out deep, back towards the main lake again. Main lake points, jigs, spoons, blade baits, it's rattle traps or lipless crankbaits. They're all working really well for those right now. Let's see, Gibbons Creek. So Gibbons Creek is fishing really good right now. Surprise, surprise. You don't hear that very often. We've gotten to fish it a little bit, and we know some people that have been able to fish it lately too. And Gibbons is fishing pretty good for bass right now. The water temperature is nice. The vegetation's coming back. So stick around the shallow structure, shallow stumps, shallow vegetation. Crankbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits work well on Gibbons. Early, throw a frog or a buzzbait. And late too. That bite seems to heat up early and late on Gibbons or a swimming frog. The rivet frogs work really well. Stick with that on Gibbons. The bass bite's really good, and as the sun comes up during the day, definitely flip the shadowy parts in the vegetation on Gibbons, and you'll catch some bass. Let's see, the crappie. So crappie, we didn't get a whole lot of good reports on crappie on Gibbons. It's basically a okay report, fair report, whatever you want to call it. People hadn't been catching them too much up shallow. My guess is they're moving out a little bit deeper. So try that standing timber, live minnows and jigs, anywhere between 8 feet and 15 feet on Gibbons, and see if you can come up with some crappie. If they're not there, I'd try pushing out a little bit deeper and see what happens on that one. Let's see, Lake Conroe, my home lake. So Conroe's fishing great right now. The bass are good. Oh, we got a June bug flying in here. Man, later. The bass are fishing good on Conroe right now. Shallow to mid depth, you can kind of catch them on multiple baits and techniques. My favorite right now is really just working around the shallow vegetation and the shallow docks. I seem to be catching quite a few fish doing that. But there's quite a few people catching them in the mid depths. They're cranking, running spinner baits, chatter baits, and they're whacking them pretty good too. It's definitely a post spawn bite for bass on Conroe. As that sun comes up during the day, definitely move on to your flipping soft plastics and your jigs. Work that the shallow stumps, shallow vegetation on the north side, and then the more shallow docks on the south side seem to be working pretty well. If you can find some shallow humps or some shallow timber that's submerged, I've heard from a few people they're biting pretty good on that too. I haven't quite moved out that far yet. I just haven't had to. But definitely try that if you're struggling. Move out about to your mid depths and work some of that timber and structure out there with some crankbaits and see what you can come up with. The crappie are actually biting pretty good, shallow to mid depth, give or take on Conroe. Start shallow, move to mid if you're struggling with the crappie and not getting bites. Minnows and jigs always seem to work well for crappie on Conroe. Black body, chartreuse tail on my jigs always seem to work well. If you're still struggling to catch them on Conroe and you can't seem to find them shallow, definitely just run to the bridge pylons or pilings or whatever they're called. Run to those, work the structure on those. You'll come up with a few crappie. I've seen a few people catching them like that right now. It just always seems to hold fish at all times of the year around those bridges. And then the hybrids and the whites, they're not very good during the day. They're okay, you can find them, but it's hit or miss. The nighttime is the best time to go catch them. We offer night trips. It's one of our favorite ways to go get fish to eat because it's just fun and there's a whole bunch of fish there. We are whacking hybrids and whites in the lights at night. So if y'all want to take a trip, go fill up your freezer with some good freshwater fish. Come fish the lights with us and we'll help you whack those. Lake Fairfield. Man, Fairfield's fishing great right now. They opened up our state parks. It had a little bit of a break right there towards their middle late spawn stage. So I'm sure it helped the bass out. But now we're back and now we're fishing for them. And Fairfield is fishing great for bass. It's a shallow water bite. You don't really need to move out anywhere past 5 or 6 feet. They're just shallow right now. They're cruising, they're eating, they're garden fry. They're kind of just in all stages of that post-spawn time of the year. You can catch them on just about anything. Spinner baits, swim jigs, swim baits, chatter baits, crankbaits, if you can get it through the grass, the lipless crankbaits. They all seem to be working really well in top waters. Surprisingly, if you throw a frog, you're going to get some blow-ups on Fairfield. During the day when the sun comes up, they're kind of pushing into that vegetation, into that grass. So definitely pitch your jigs, flip your worms, pitch your worms in there, and you'll get some bites up shallow. They're up there feeding on the bluegill, so if you can find some bluegill beds, hang around those for a little while and work some different baits and see if you can come up with some bites. Speaking of bluegill on Fairfield, the bluegill bite's actually really hot right now. They are shallow, they are getting ready to spawn, they're making their beds. Some of them might already be spawning, but they're up there just kind of doing their thing and the bass are feeding on them. So if you like to catch some bluegill and fry them up like I do, hit up Fairfield, grab you some crickets, go fish shallow, and you'll catch some monster bluegill out there. Let's see what we got next. Houston County Lake. It's another great lake that's close by Houston and we love to fish. The bass are good out there despite what anybody says. I went to the boat ramp the other day and there was a bunch of people complaining they weren't catching any fish, and I launched my kayak for a few hours and caught multiple fish. So I don't really know what was going on there. You can catch them multiple ways, shallow to mid depth ranges. If you're going to work the shallow bite early, work top waters, work frogs. real early, and then as that sun starts to come up, definitely work those smaller swim baits, smaller swim jigs and stuff up shallow around the vegetation, and then pitch your soft plastic worms in there and your lizards. Those two seem to be working really well on the shallow bite for Houston County Lake for bass. If you want to fish the mid-depths, move out more to those mid-depth brush piles and out to the docks that are around the deeper water on Houston County. Work around those. You'll definitely get some bites doing that. They should be transitioning out deep. Actually, right now, it'd be a good time for them to start transitioning out a little bit deeper, more into that 10-foot range. So don't hesitate to check the 10-foot range on those brush piles as well and see if you can come up with some big bites of those grills that spawned early and have already moved out. The crappie are actually fishing good on Houston County. A few people we talked to said they're catching them all the way up to 5 to 8 feet of water, and then some people are catching them all the way out into 15 feet of water. So you can kind of catch crappie in multiple ranges of water. Right now, minnows and jigs, obviously. Stick to the timber for the crappie out there in the brush piles. There's plenty of them. There's brush piles everywhere. You'll probably catch you some spotted bass out there too. The spotted bass bite is pretty good out in that timber right now. And then every once in a while, you'll get some spotted bass off the docks as well. And then the bluegill. That's another one, Houston County Lake. The bluegill are fishing good out there right now. That's why you're still finding some of those bass up shallow. They're up there gorging on those bluegill that are spawning. Definitely fish with crickets up shallow for those bluegill. You will get bit. There's a lot of them. East end of the lake seems to be really hot for the bluegill right now. Let's see, what we got next? Yeah, Sam Rayburn. Sam Rayburn's fishing really good for bass right now. Lots of people are catching fish lots of different ways. The bite's good shallow, the bite's good mid-depth. You can kind of catch them in both places, working those grass lines if you want. Shallow structure, work spinner baits, chatter baits through that shallow structure, swim jigs, swim baits, just things that you can get through that brush. Lake's a little bit high right now, so those bass are up there feeding in the thick stuff a lot. And as that sun comes up, don't be afraid to pitch in there into that shallow brush. Get in there with your soft plastic worms and your lizards and your jigs. Pitch in there, you're going to get some bites for bass. If you don't want to fish shallow or you're not getting any bites shallow, move out just a little bit to a little bit deeper structure of those grass lines and kind of do the same thing. Work your moving baits until you get bit and slow down, and you'll find them in pockets in those areas as well. The crappie are actually good on Rayburn. Minnows and jigs again. I've got some information from people saying that the pinkish and the orangish jigs are actually working pretty well on Sam Rayburn for the crappie. If you're a jig fisherman, sometimes I get lazy and I just like to go use minnows. But if you just have to use a jig, try the pink and the orange colors for crappie on Sam Rayburn right now. And they're shallow to mid-depth. So you can kind of catch them up shallow. You can kind of catch them pushing out a little bit. You really get to pick your poison on the crappie right now. And then the white bass are slow. So we don't fish for white bass on Rayburn very often, but the few people that we talk to that we know do said the white bass are pretty slow right now. My guess is they're transitioning back to the main lake right now. So if you're going to go fishing for white bass, definitely check those main lake points and work those first, and then kind of work your way back into the creek arms. See if you can locate them from there. What do we got next? Central Texas. Yeah, I got some information from Kyle again, who I have down in the description. Go check out his YouTube channel. Go check out his Facebook. Central Texas is fishing great right now too. All of Texas is fishing great right now. It's just that time of year where it's a ton of fun before it gets real hot. So the bass are definitely late spawn to post spawn in Central Texas. Stillhouse, Belton, Trading House, Lake Waco, or whatever that lake's called. Waco Lake, Lake Waco. I don't even know what it's called. They're all fishing about the same right now. If you're finding the clearer water, definitely stick to the shallow gravel is what he said. If you got a little bit of tinge in that water, they're also on the shallow timber as well as the gravel. You'll find some post spawners that have kind of moved out a little bit, not very deep. They're just out off the bank a little bit, feeding in those mid depths as well. You can kind of pick your poison on that. Crankbaits, spinnerbaits, chatterbaits, same lineup. It's working really well out there right now. If you're having trouble, I've got this in my notes right here. If you're having trouble on the shallow structure and things like that, go check the creek ends of those lakes if you have it, like Stillhouse and things like that. The bass fishing seems to be pretty good in the vegetation and up in the creeks as well, if you need that for a backup. The crappie are good shallow out there right now. Not a whole lot in the mid depth. I mean, everything's pretty much 10 feet or less. Jigs and minnows, just like usual. In the creeks as well. If you're having trouble locating the crappie, go up in the creeks and see if you can locate them on the laydowns and things like that, the structure that you see hanging over the creek. A lot of times you'll find the bass nearby feeding on those crappie as well. And then the white bass are actually good. They're going back towards the main lake. Check the main lake points. Check those points that you usually do for the summer pattern for the white bass. They've kind of moved out a little bit. Jigs, spoons, blade baits again, or you can live bait them. It's whatever you want to do. And then top water's early. Let's see. Yeah, last but not least. So we got some more inshore information for you for the Galveston area from Merrill. He actually gave us some really good information this week. So trout are feeding and spawning over the grass night and day. The bigger trout seem to be spawning at night over that grass. He said work top waters and fat boys over the grass at night. And during the day, you'll still catch some trout over that grass, but it's the smaller fish. So the nighttime fishing for the big girls over the grass seems to be working really well. Daytime redfish, just work your typical pattern, your drains, your shell beds, things like that around your marshes, and look for your tailing reds. They seem to be chewing on just about anything right now. But the trout are also being caught along the intercoastal waterway. Mariel said that small paddle tails seem to be working really well. He mentioned specifically Bubba cluckers, Bugs jigs as well, and then DOA Cal 3 inches. Those little 3-incher, I don't know if you've seen them, the paddle tails seem to be working really well. And then at night, that's when I like to go fish inshore. That's my favorite way to fish them because it's fun to go catch a bunch of food. DOA 3-inch shrimp, especially in the glow color, seems to be working really well for trout and reds in the lights at night. He said work that DOA shrimp through there, and you'll definitely catch some fish. For some crazy reason, it's just not getting bit and they're just not wanting that shrimp, try switching up to the small paddle tails. There's a ton of shad in the lights down there. So you never know, that may be what gets you bit. That's all we have for you this time. If you would like to see us go fish a lake and it's reasonable and we can get to it fairly easily, definitely drop it down in the comments. We are looking for people that fish frequently up in North Texas and West Texas. We would like to add some lakes out there. So if you know anybody or that's you, definitely drop it down in the comments. Let us know. We'd like to reach out to y'all and get some great information for our fishing report. And as always, guys, thanks for watching this. Thanks for your support. I mean, honestly, we couldn't do this without you. There's no point in doing this without you. It's a lot of fun being able to give information to people and watch them go catch fish. It's just one of the fun things that we get to do. Real quick, I actually just wanted to show y'all these. I got these in. These are Reaction Innovations. These are the double wides. I don't know if y'all can see that. It's awesome double wides. So I'm super excited about these. Big baits, big fish during the summer. I'm going to try fishing these out deep. I just got these in. I just didn't know if y'all ever seen the double wides. It's a ginormous beaver bait. And I'm really excited to fish out deep. Every once in a while I'm going to just start grabbing some other baits and showing y'all. And we'll go make some videos with them. Again, guys, thanks for your support. Definitely donate to anything you can helping out the Lake Livingston, Alaska area because of the tornado. They could sure use it right now, and we could support them in many ways. Thanks, guys. We'll see y'all next time.